MG and mortar team is in place about 75 meters directly in front of us. What I want you guys to do is we're gonna ditch anything we don't need right now. I want you guys fast and light. So ammo, explosives, that's the only thing I want you guys carrying. Jonathan, I want you to get your DM rifle up on this ridge here. I want you to cover our approach. Wait for us to initiate and then provide good solid cover for us. Tracking?
I mean, I could do DM too, I do PRS, so.
We're good. I saw your last score. Kenny, you're our fastest one. I want you to flank off to the right, get in a position over this berm over here, and wait for the MG to start clacking off.
Maybe I should flank with them too, go with them.
Josh, place the MG here, give us 60 seconds to get set, and then let them have it.
Sounds good. I mean, maybe I should be on the MG. I can let them have it.
Maybe you should shut up. Stay here and feed him mags. You guys set?
Yes.
Let's go.
The ability to suppress your enemy gives you power over them. Now, that's kind of a tall task for a standard rifleman or even a designated marksman. But for auto riflemen or for a machine gunner, that is just what they do.
Now, the day of the auto rifleman is upon us, and I'll give you two examples. Number one, the Marine Corps shifted from the SAW to the M27 IAR, which is effectively just an M4 with a heavier barrel and the ability to go full auto. The other is the fact that the DOJ just lost a lawsuit against rare breed triggers with FRTs, force reset triggers.
Nice job, Rare Breed. Nice job.
Now, first, for the sake of YouTube, we have to state that none of the guns that we're shooting today are auto. They are all semi-automatic firearms. Here's a great example. But being that civilians have now unlocked the auto rifleman inside of the skill tree, it is important for us to understand some of the tactics, techniques, and procedures around employing machine guns and or IARs and force reset triggers in an offensive and defensive position.
Now, you may be watching this wondering, what is an IAR? It stands for Infantry Automatic Rifle. It's not a belt fed, it's just an AR that is set up to be an auto rifle. I just used the definition within the definition. So today we're gonna take a look at what gunners do, how they assist a team, and the things that they need to consider, but we're gonna keep it to the most basic level. The curriculum we're gonna be referencing is found in the US Marine Corps Machine Gun Employment publication. Now, obviously, we are not professional machine gunners, so take everything we say with a grain of salt, but I will say that we've been working on this video, on this script for a very long time with an actual US Marine Corps machine gunner. He's been to advanced machine gun school and has actually had a lot of time doing this in very interesting places in the world, and he was with us every step of the way and gave the final check of approval on all of this content. He cannot be on camera because of what he does right now, but legit dude. And with that being said, let's get into it.
Psych! We are not going to get right into it. We were so excited about this video that we actually forgot the sponsors, which ironically enough is exactly how we are able to make content like this for you guys for free on YouTube every single week. So first and foremost, Zero Gravity. Now, if you are putting an optic, any optic, on a gun that has a little bit more recoil or even faster recoil, we'll say for the sake of YouTube, you're going to want something that is sturdy and solid. Additionally, if you're running something like a scope or an LPVO and you do have a top dot, buying from Zero Gravity means that they have figured out the heights for your top dots so that you get the full window of your dot over the turret. So if you do want to have some of those benefits as well as insurance that you are getting a lightweight quality made in America mount for your optic, go check out Zero Gravity. Next, we have Wetworks. Wetworks is the chest rigs as well as the plate carriers that we were wearing all day when we were filming this. It was like 100 degrees, and even still, we were able to push through it. And we do spend a lot of time in our gear, and so that is just another testament to these plate carriers. While they are slick, they are comfortable enough to wear all day long. And finally, we have onX Off-Road. Now, I know that it is an off-road mapping tool, but there's a lot of hidden features if you know how to kind of explore through an app like that. So for example, onX Off-Road is able to offer you a quick overlay of what lands are private or public, where you are allowed to camp, maybe even where natural springs are if you're looking for some extra water, and some of those extra hidden features are being able to drop a pin and range from here to that defilade or to that to the road. How far is that? And it will tell you right away. So if you are looking for a good way to start to navigate around your world and take a look at your line of sight, or even be able to just go camping and I can shoot on public land in my state, then go check out Onyx Off-Road. Link and discounts are in all of the descriptions. And with that, let's get back to the video. All right, but before we dive in too fast, we do have to give a quick disclaimer. There's a lot of things around MG employment and crew serve weapons that will not necessarily apply to you or me as civilians. But with a critical mind, you will start to be able to pull the sweet spot out of all of these acronyms and theories that specifically the Marine Corps is using when employing tools like this. And from there, we can start to figure out how to treat machine guns, maybe when they're being used against us, and or how to employ them, whether you're picking one up or you take the time to actually build out an IAR. With that being said, hit that sub button, hold on to your butts, and let's get this thing going.
Now, when utilized correctly, these types of tools can cover a myriad of different uses. For example, initiating an ambush, area denial, fire support, gaining fire superiority, and just general suppression of the enemy. We can and we will expand on all of that in a whole auto rifle series with a bunch of different cool dudes, but today let's start with just suppression because that's a really good starting point.
Yep, and like Drew mentioned, crew serve weapons have a broad range of capabilities, but today we're really just going to start with the basics. And in doing so, we're going to cover the acronym used by the Marine Corps that reminds people how to employ and emplace tools like this. That acronym is Pick 'em Deep. Let's begin with the first letter, P, for pairs.
There's always the goal of deploying gunners in pairs, and that is to achieve a higher rate of fire and a consistent rate of fire so that you keep the enemy completely suppressed. You don't want them being able to move, you don't want them being able to take a shot, you don't even want them to be able to observe what you're doing. The problem is if you only have one gunner, what happens when that gunner has to reload? Or what happens when that gunner has a malfunction? Or in the case of like a 249, has to swap out a barrel? The other problem is that if there's only one gunner, that guy becomes a huge target. And we've all seen this play out in movies and video games. An MG opens up on a convoy, and what do you hear? Some NPC screaming over the radio, "Take out that MG!"
Can't advance with those MGs firing on our position! Grab some cover and put some fire on that crew!
And that's just one of the many reasons that the Marine Corps works to deploy machine guns in pairs. Everything and everyone benefits when they work together. Everything from the fields of fire to the economy of ammunition, the cover, so on and so forth. And this is all going to make a lot more sense as we get further into the acronym, but there's a reason why at the outset they start their acronym with working in pairs. Now on top of all of that, it's also a redundancy. As Drew mentioned, there are strengths and weaknesses to crew serve weapons. And if something heats up, if you have a malfunction and people are working on it, having a second system that can be up and running in the middle of the chaos is not nice, it's mandatory. So that's something else for you to think about as a civilian. What roles can I fill that can be helpful to a team? A ton of ammunition and the ability to fire fast. So remember, working in pairs is the first point. Let's move on to the next one, I. Interlocking fire. If you've ever taken a CQB class, you know the importance of spreading people out and having them both look downrange and internal. Essentially, when I can't see as far to my right and he can't see as far to his left, we are visually protecting each other and we can push firepower past each other. We are creating an X down range with intersecting fire. Now, there's multiple benefits to this.
So in short, interlocking fire decreases the dead space or the blind spots where the enemies can move and creates a wall of fire that is basically impenetrable. Okay, so where Josh and I are located right now actually very well demonstrates interlocking fire. I'm over here on the right, I can see to the left and straight on. Josh is over on the left, he can see to the right and straight on. But Josh has a blind spot on his left, that's what I'm covering. I have a blind spot on my right, that's what he is covering. So between the two of us, we can kind of make sure that our blind spots or any of that dead space is absolutely locked down. Anytime you're doing this, think about what the bird's eye view is, right? If we zoom out and if we look down on ourselves, we can see where our cones of fire from each one of our individual guns intersect at some point and are also covering the blind spots.
Coordination of fire. So because you have two individual teams that are spread out and strategically placed, you're going to need to be careful to have coordination and communication between both teams. So when you have enough manpower and when machine gunnery is done at the highest level in the military, you actually have someone who is not pulling triggers, they're not running ammunition, they are pulled back and they are observing the whole orchestra, the artwork of everything that's going on. Someone who is in charge of just being the brains of the observation. His sole job is just to oversee the effects downrange and communicate and coordinate between both teams. Now, obviously, there's a lot of nuance to all of this when you consider that there's not just 2 MGs on the ground. When you start to incorporate the fact that you may have riflemen and other squads or other fire teams that are moving around you or maybe out in front of your fields of fire, you need to have someone who is aware of what's going on. Something as simple as your left and right lateral limit.
What the heck are left and right lateral limits? Well, in average Joe terms, you're just setting the limit of your cone or your angle so that if I'm on the right, I don't shoot too far left and into my other gunner, right? This can be determined by a couple of different things. The limitations of your weapons platform, how far it can actually shoot accurately. It can also be determined by where the other gunners are within your environment and where friendly forces are as well. To boil it down, it's just making sure that you never shoot in an unsafe direction, given what is going on around you. Now, for civilians who are preparing for defense situations, we don't always have the luxury of having a TL or the manpower to have someone stand back and just observing, right? So there's a lot of little things that you can do beforehand. If you have an environment or property that you plan on defending and you want to implement an auto rifle, one of the tools that we use, we can hop on a mapping tool and actually plot different points on the map and then put a line of sight layer over that so we know, like, hey, from this position, generally speaking, this is what I can see. And we do the same thing with gunner number 2. We see what he can see. That helps us establish our intersecting fire and also helps us determine right off the bat, hey, whenever I am in my position, if I look this degrees, this direction, I know that I don't need to shoot beyond that. I don't need to go more left or more right. I can fine tune it. And if I just go into my spot with a compass, I can know immediately where I need to stop. And one quick way to do this, because we don't have crew serve weapons. Crew serve weapons, which is what Pick 'em Deep was kind of designed for, they actually have like T&E and tripods, things to lock down your limits, right? With an auto rifle, we don't have that. We don't have a knob that we can crank that locks down our elevation. We don't have a thing to clamp down to lock our left and right limits. We just have to be cognizant of it. But one old trick is simply chopping down some thin sticks, shoving them down into the earth, and our barrel basically can never pass over that. That's a good way to set safe left and right lateral limits. Another thing to consider when talking about coordination of fire is deciding ahead of time how it's going to go down or how you're going to initiate, right? So for example, let's say we have 2 gunners. They're both set up with interlocking and intersecting fields of fire. We may determine that gunner 1 is going to see targets first, okay? But if he were to open up the moment he sees them, they have a really good place to get back into cover. So perhaps gunner 1 doesn't shoot as soon as he sees them, allows them to get into gunner 2's kill box, and gunner 2 decides to initiate. That way it pushes them back into gunner 1's field of view, and thus you have an amazing kill box and you maximize casualties. That is something that you would determine ahead of time, goes into coordination of fire. Another thing that the TL is going to decide, or you have to decide as you're making a plan for defending an area, is primary and alternate positions, right? Let's say targets hit a particular landmark and now gunner 2's position is far less effective. If that happens, we're talking a lot about if this then that type of scenarios, then there is already a secondary position established that gunner 2 knows that he needs to go to, and there is a new field of fire established, and you still have interlocking fire and you still have your left and right lateral limits. This is something that should be thought of ahead of time and planned out ahead of time as much as you possibly can.
The point, guys, is that using tools like this is far more than just having a pair of dudes intersecting their fire and hammering down on the trigger. There's a lot more art to all of this. So let's move on to some of the next points so that it starts to make a little bit more sense with how we need to coordinate and what needs to be coordinated. Mutual support. All right, so as you can tell, we're starting to get into the zone where we're kind of getting repetitive. Pairs, intersecting fields of fire, mutual support. Yeah, no doubt, of course you want to support each other, but what does that actually mean? So let's say that you have 2 machine gun teams that are emplaced. What is the most likely route for an enemy to come around and try and flank you? If you are not protecting that zone and protecting your machine gun teams with one team or another, you aren't actually mutually supporting one another. So mutual support is not just about supporting your team, the other riflemen, people who are maneuvering. you're working to support one another. That is a crucial component to emplacing machine guns in any location.
Essentially what this boils down to is, as a gunner, one of your jobs is to protect the other gunner, protect the guy who's protecting you. It also goes way beyond that. If you have the manpower, having someone who is basically an ammo mule that has access to both gunners to be able to resupply them. I know that's not very realistic in terms of civilian defense, so carrying tons of ammo on you is really important, but also taking time before you set up to make sure both gunners are totally squared away and on even keel in terms of how much ammo they have is a really big point. Now, if you notice, we're 4 letters into Pick 'em Deep, and every single one of these is kind of a redundancy. They overlap, and I think that is to drive home the point that this position, this role within a team is a support role. It is a protection role. You are not the lead operator doing crazy stuff. It is boring. It's not boring because you're shooting, auto rifles, but it's not flashy. Your job is to protect. That is it. And so here's kind of a morbid example. If, as a gunner, you see one of your riflemen and he's being flanked by the enemy, then you see your other gunner and the same thing is happening to him. Who do you pick? The gunner. Because by protecting the gunner, you're protecting the guy who's protecting more people. Again, it's morbid, but that's kind of the focus of the role. So for example, Josh and I right now are set up. He's on the left again, I'm on the right. We have intersecting fields of fire, but both of us have some serious blind spots in which someone could walk up on us, right? So for Josh, that's gonna be the cliff right underneath him, the defilade there. Enemies could move up underneath him. They could chuck up grenades or just shoot up at him because his barrel's protruding over the ledge. But I have that covered. For me, over here to my right, I have berms that protect me and mask me, but also someone could be pushing up in that blind spot on me, and Josh has that covered. So right now, we're protecting each other from our most vulnerable sides, essentially. So this is a good example, or it's a decent example. I will say, for those of you watching, you may think, oh, you two guys are really close together. You should be dispersed more. I totally get that. How close two gunners are to one another really comes down to the terrain. If you can spread it out super far, awesome. But out here, the terrain, it means that we have to be a little bit closer together, a little bit tighter together. So that's all, that all just comes down to the micro terrain, the landscape, and what you're actually trying to cover.
Whenever possible, machine guns should be emplaced in defilade. But what is defilade? Defilade is either a man-made or artificial obstacle that is meant to protect against incoming fire. So this could be something as simple as digging a foxhole, getting behind a downed log, or even if you chase this far enough, you could be treating it as an entire building or a mountainside or a big hillside as your defilade, but you are physically getting behind a barrier that's going to protect against incoming fire. Now, what do I actually mean by using an entire building or a full hillside as defilade? So if you have an actual crew serve weapon with sandbags, your tripod, your T&E equipment, what you can do is have a forward observer, which is someone who just goes exactly like it sounds, forward, out down range, and they are simply observing your impacts and your hits on target. You would then be lobbing rounds over that building, lobbing rounds over that bridge or whatever it is that you're using to protect yourself, and those rounds are just falling out of the sky, and your forward observer is calling your left and your right, short or long, in order to get good hits. And when you are doing that, you're launching what turns into, think like artillery. And when you do that and you have those rounds falling like artillery, that is plunging fire. So let's go a little bit deeper and explain what plunging fire is.
All right, so two terms that you should recognize here. Plunging fire, which is a high angle projectile falling into a beaten zone. The second one being beaten zone. A beaten zone is just the area in which rounds are impacting. So depending on your weapon system, your recoil control, how far the target is, the beaten zone might look different. You might have a tight one, you might have a wide one. And generally speaking, that beaten zone is going to look almost like an egg, kind of like a tall oval shape. This might sound like a silly example, but if you've ever played professional paintball or you've watched it back in its heyday when it was on ESPN, that is just a game at the professional level. That is a game of plunging fire. From the break, you have two guys go to the corners, and from those corners, all they're doing is lobbing rounds because paintballs don't shoot very far, so they start to fall off. sooner, but they're just arcing rounds into a zone that people have to move through. So as the enemy team or as the other team tries to get to a better position, a closer position, more advantageous angles, they have to run through those beaten zones and hopefully not get hit. That entire sport is plunging fire and beaten zones. And if you can nail down the right angles and lob rounds in the right area, you win. Now there is a little bit of nuance whenever it comes to auto rifles. These are not artillery. This is not stuff that you're lobbing over buildings with any sort of like good effect on target. For auto rifles, it's basically, at what point does my round truly start to fall off, truly start to dip down?
Now for heavier crew serve weapons, you can really create good plunging fire and a consistent beaten zone out to 1,200, 3,000 meters if need be. But with just a lightweight AR-15 on a bipod, that's not nearly as consistent or possible. But even still, being that we're up here, we can demonstrate out to about 400 to 500 yards, which is where plunging fire starts to come into effect with a platform like this, and we can demonstrate what a beaten zone looks like. All right, I'm in a little bit of defilade here. I have a target out at about 475. So at that range, my 5.56 is gonna start to drop off and I'm gonna get that plunging fire. And with a drone, we're gonna be able to show you guys what that beaten zone starts to look like. Let's check it out. So obviously guys, all the way out at that range, you gotta think about your beaten zone kind of like groups. If I were to be shooting closer at say 50 yards and still at a downward angle, it would still be plunging fire because my rounds would be falling in relationship to the earth. But the groups or beaten zone would be significantly tighter. So having an understanding of your weapon system and just knowing what those rounds and that pattern is actually gonna look like is gonna allow you to set up with your defilade with effects on target significantly better. So there's plunging fire and a beaten zone. Now let's take a second and talk about grazing fire. All right, grazing fire. This is not the same as plunging fire. We'll go so far as to say that it's the opposite of plunging fire. Now, I'm not gonna put my kit back on for this because it has a real feel of 103 with like 60% humidity. Kind of dying out here. So let's say that I am level with the earth and I have targets, could be 200 targets, as many as you want, but they're here from 50 or muzzle distance all the way out to about 400 yards. Well, with a gun like this, knowing your weapon system again, I don't necessarily have to hold any higher or any lower in order to generate impacts from about the hips to shoulder height. So really, I can just rake back and forth on targets and generate all of the impacts that I need from, again, about muzzle all the way out to about 400 yards, being that I am level with the earth. But what happens when I want to make impacts all the way out to, let's say 400, 500, 600 yards? So you can see here in the trigger cam, I'm gonna have to elevate my optic and barrel from about this height all the way up to about here in order to make hits on that road at 500. And I will be well above the height of my targets, even closer to me. So I would be sending rounds well above them, and then I would be generating plunging fire at distance, but I would not be able to achieve grazing fire. So grazing fire, if you are working to really have a good space of area denial, you want to absolutely lock down, let's say, an LDA, a linear danger area, like a road in a city. If you're set up on a second, third, fourth story building, you're not creating that grazing fire on the road. If you are down on that first floor, you would be creating grazing fire along that LDA, along that long stretch of road. But what happens if your concern is on the fourth story of a building across the street? Well, then if I were to set up my machine gun or whatever tool you have on that fourth story, you could then create grazing fire on the same fourth story of a totally different building. So the point is being in line and level with your targets, and you have, knowing your weapon system, a range on an 18-inch barrel like this from about 0 to about 400 yards to make hits, again, from about hips to shoulder height. So there's grazing fire versus plunging fire. So if you need to give yourself a mental picture to really delineate between plunging fire and grazing fire is when your rounds are acting like a laser, going straight through. You could even generate more than one hit with one bullet. Plunging fire is when you're dropping something like artillery.
Enfilade. Enfilade is a gunner's most desirable class of fire. And contrary to popular belief, it is not the opposite of defilade. It is just its own thing, so don't confuse those words. They have nothing to do with each other. What the heck does that mean, right? Basically what it boils down to is our beaten zone needs to run the length of their formation. When it does, that is called enfilade. So just imagine for a second that you were rocking a cannon, right? And you were to shoot a cannonball at a formation of dudes who were all walking in a straight line towards you. You would hit the first guy, the cannonball would go through, hit the second, third, fourth. It's the ultimate collateral, right? Also, so that's if guys are in a file coming straight towards you. But let's say they're going across from you, right? But they're in a line, right? So they're walking across, but they're still side by side each other. That is still enfilade fire. Now, if they're not walking at you in a file and they're not walking across in a line, but they're walking at like an angle, that is called oblique. It's not as desirable as the other classes of enfilade, but it is still a great situation. The reason why enfilade is such a beautiful thing is that you don't have to work super hard to get lots of hits. You just hold down the trigger. It's kind of nice. This is one of those times where milsim really sucks because you come around the corner, you see a big group of guys and you just start hosing them down, but the guy in the front just sponges all the rounds like he's some NPC in the Division 2. It's just, you know, it's not fair. It's not like, you know, real life. Not that I've, you know, bullet hosed a dude hoping to get a collateral or anything like that, but that's enfilade. Now you may be asking yourself, well, when would I ever need to use that? Maybe you won't. However, knowing what a machine gunner is trying to set you up for, knowing what a group of guys are trying to do to you, can change how you and your crew of guys decide how to cross a linear danger area, how to decide how to cross a road, decide how to go down a street. If you know what they're trying to funnel you into and what they're trying to exact on you, like if they could get you to be in frontal enfilade fire, man, that's awesome for them. So if you know that, you can plan accordingly and change up your formations, change up your patrols to mitigate that potential risk.
Economy of ammunition. Yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's being economic and or frugal with the ammo that you have, the fuel for your gunfight, let's just say. But let me paint a little bit of a picture for you. So let's say that you are an MG, you're emplaced, and you have friendlies who are running around 300 yards in the open. Doesn't matter if they're flanking, maybe they're feigning retreat, whatever it is that they're doing, they're in the open and your job as a support role is to protect them. So doctrinally, you open up with a 50-round burst, and right after, you start initiating with 6 to 10 rounds every 2 to 3 seconds. Well, that's about 150 rounds in roughly 60 seconds. Those 3 mag micro chest rigs aren't sounding super good right now, are they? But then we also have to consider how fast our buddy can run. So at least here in America, with a quick Google search, the average American can run about 300 yards on level terrain in about 70 seconds.
Got him!
It's probably worse than that. And then we also have to consider you're wearing a lot of kit and you're probably carrying a rifle. So at that rate, you're probably gonna need closer to 200 rounds just to keep the bad guys' heads down while your buddy is running out in the open. Well, when we go back to considering the fact that most Americans are only on their plate carrier rocking 3 mags and 1 in their gun, that limited amount of ammo is simply not enough, especially when you are in a support role that is dedicated to protecting your own teammates. And let's say that you did happen to have a saw, a tool that was actually designed for suppression, something like this. Well, every 2 minutes, roughly, it's supposed to have a barrel change. So what can we do to save ammo, going back to economics, ammo economy? What can we do to save ammo and to keep our gun cooler? The answer, talking guns. What the heck is talking guns? So let's say that you do have your pairs, 2 machine guns, and they are working to protect your teammates. When someone opens up with a 6 to 9 round burst, they stop and cease fire for a moment, and the other pairs, the other machine gun team, picks up with a 6 to 9 round burst. So the guns are talking next to each other. And downrange, it sounds like a constant string of fire, as if someone was just holding down on that belt-fed weapon, sending rounds. But both teams are able to keep their guns a little bit cooler because they're not having to run like a sewing machine the entire time, and they get to save a little bit of ammo as well. Now, even still with talking guns, while you're holding down on that trigger, generally for that 6 to 9 round window, they have a saying. While they're holding down on the trigger, they say, "Die, die." or run, fuzzy bunny, run. While you are holding down on the trigger, when your sentence ends, you let off the trigger. Now that is a ton of shooting for a standard M4 or even something like an auto rifleman, but that's really where uppers like this from Red Right Hand are starting to come into play, being that FRTs are becoming more and more legalized. Having an upper with a system that can adjust your gas setting, you have a SOCOM barrel, and you can vent the heat based on the design under the handguard, they really, really come into play. Finally, guys, we get to protection. So what does that mean if we're talking about protection with machine guns? Well, it can mean a number of things. Number one, because machine guns are so important to utilize and so important to take out on a battlefield, we need to set up security for protection. Now, if you don't have extra machine guns, that may mean using riflemen to have security to the flanks. That may also mean what happens if that machine gun gets overrun. If you have an egress point where you need to get away, down a hill, down a long LDA, again, linear danger area, can that machine gun easily be turned and used on you? So when you are selecting a location, you need to have protection, defilade for yourself, but also protection with your people around you and the ability to then destroy your own machine gun if need be. So that may mean that you have another team that is set up observing its flanks, and if worse comes to worse, you have to turn on and destroy that machine gun, or a team that is coming to overrun that machine gun. So Drew is going to give a few examples of poor places and good places to set up a machine gun with protection in mind.
Okay, so here's a great example of a position where I have an amazing field of view. Man, I could wreck anything down in that valley. I've got a little bit of coverage to my left. I've got a little bit of coverage to my right because of the landscape, and overall, not a bad position at all, especially if you consider the fact that all of this stuff is made up of rocks and sticks, and it's actually pretty decent cover. And let's say I had another gunner up there on the hill watching down this way, or a friendly element over here on my right. Not a bad position, except for the fact that look at what's behind me. Well, there's Josh back there, but in addition to that, it's no man's land, and it's on an upward incline. So if I have to move positions, I am screwed. I am here until we win or we all die. Well, let's take a look at another one. So I could move down to this, even. Get one of these numbers, right? I could even come up over the top here, right? Overall, not terrible. Now let's say I set up this spot for a really nice enfilade opportunity, right? Guys either crossing through here or coming right at me. I'm in defilade. I've got hard cover. This is excellent. I've even got some protection in terms of concealment up here. With the ACOG, I can look right through it. If I'm having trouble, I can look through the top dot, and with both eyes open, can still see through it, can shoot through it. It's amazing. Conceals my position a little bit as well. The problem is, once again, look at where I'm at. I'm like stuck in a hole. The only way out is down and towards an enemy, right? Not a good situation. The other option is I start having to bound back. Now, this is way more doable than the last position, but still not a great call. And let's say I get smoked doing that. Now my tool, which is a team asset, falls into someone else's hands, and they have the perfect opportunity to smoke us on our way out. Now, if roles were reversed and we were actually worried about bad guys coming from that direction, this is very defendable. I've got a little bit of defilade here and a quick egress out and down and around. So one position can be great or could be terrible, just depending on what your objective is and what you're aiming at. Think through the details of the environment.
Well, guys, that's Pick 'em Deep. It's kind of a messy acronym, but to be honest with you, it's one of the best places to start if you're a civilian looking at the auto rifleman world. And this concept of this unlocked category is deep. It goes very, very deep, and there's a lot of nuance in all of it. So this is just one video out of many covering this style content and firearms like this. We have to say a huge thank you to our friend who was able to help us talk through some of the points and some of the nuances of all of this. Now, he was able to express that advanced Machine Gunner School is a 6-week course. We clearly do not understand it as deep as we need to, so we're going to continue to do research. And we encourage you guys to as well, go do your own research. Pick up a manual, search online for some of the pubs and see what you can learn just by reading, asking questions, and also getting out here and training with the boys.
Yeah, we know that you guys are going to walk away from this with an incomplete understanding of gunner theory, right? And that's okay. We want to get you guys going down that rabbit hole and start watching other people's content on this kind of stuff and start asking questions and start experimenting on your own. This is just to kind of push you over the edge, and it absolutely has pushed us over the edge. We're going to be doing a whole lot more stuff with auto rifles, including like, you know, the loadouts, which is always cool, but also more interesting things regarding movement and small unit tactics, that sort of stuff. Now, one thing you will pick up on as you go down this journey is that a lot of the information out there is mostly suited towards saw gunners and crew served weapons. There's not a lot of auto rifle specific like manuals out there. So, you know, take it all with a grain of salt. You know, a critical mind will find things in machine gun theory and be able to apply them to the auto rifleman role. So just be smart, use common sense, use what works and throw away what doesn't.
Action items for you guys, obviously number 1 is work out. Carrying heavy guns and a lot of ammo is not easy, especially when it's 103 and super humid. So make sure your body is in shape. That is a really big deal. Number 2, I would say, is while this is a bullet hose to some degree, still knowing what your gun's dope is. What should I hold at 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 yards? Having a reference point to some degree. An ACOG is great, but if you have something like a 2 to 10 or even a red dot, knowing how to put effective fire downrange at distance, regardless what your gun's build looks like and how fast it shoots, having a little bit of dope goes a really long way.
All designated marksman rules apply.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And finally, be willing to make some changes to some of your kit, because it is not the exact same as being a DM. You will have to change some of your gear in order to be a support player for your team.
Now, we don't know how long we're going to have access to this kind of technology. So I would say now is the best time in the past, 50, 60 years that we've had as American civilians to step into this role, and I would double down and absolutely take advantage of it. And we don't get any kickback from any auto rifle company or anything like that, but now is the time.
Were you trying to fall?
No, that was an accident. All right, we got a MG. Sorry, I swore. One more time. All right, here goes. We're good, thanks.
Hold on.
I'm trying to look dumb too.
All right, you're doing great.
Already forgot what I was gonna say.
Oh, there's multiple benefits to this, and I can't remember what those are.